So picking up where we left off, we're going to get into the strong and italic tags. At some point, I'm going to stop saying it. But just remember, we have our opening and closing tags, wrapping the content that we want to affect, that we want to mark up. The only thing that's different here is the specific choice of tag that we want to use. In this case, strong, and I for italic. The strong tag is a phrase tag. It defines important text by bolding it. And the I tag defines a part of the text that's in an alternate voice or mood. The content of the I tag is usually displayed as an italic. So let's just take a look at what we have here. We have one phrase here written. This is the strong tag. Again, they're next to each other because we didn't add anything else. And HTML ignores these empty lines and it just throws everything together unless you tell it otherwise. We see that this first part is wrapped in strong. That's why it's bolded, followed by regular text, and then another bolded part. And the same rules apply to this part down here, which is written in italics. Usually you'll see, I have a little comment here in the code side. It says, usually you will see HTML code written like this. There will be a P tag. This is the P tag I'm referring to in this statement. With a specific part, the strong tag, written right there, or italic. This is what's called an inline element, and putting it inside a P tag is perfectly okay. Pretty much what I'm saying there, that for this purpose, while you're understanding HTML, since we haven't done much yet with structure, you can do things like this in this case. Inside of a P tag, you can add a strong tag, you can add an italic. That's no problem. Where the problems come in if you try to have a P tag and then within it you put an H1. That kind of defeats the purpose. We can try it out real quick actually. You see this text right here? I'm just going to improvise right here and throw it in a P tag first, just to illustrate this issue. What did I do wrong here? I'm going to give you a second. Bum, 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 bum. If you said I forgot the slash on the P tag at the end, you're correct. Right here, I forgot to put a slash. And you need to do that to end the element. Okay, so now our paragraph is a P tag. And if I wanted to, in the middle of it, throw in a strong tag, gotta tell it where to end. That's no problem because strong tags are inline elements and they're not going to break the flow of the element. However, an H1 is a block element. We'll get into this in lesson 3, but if I were to change into an H1, look at what happens. Yes, it's wrapped inside of a P tag, so at least the whole thing is nice and contained. But the line broke, the paragraph specifically visually broke because the H1 tag took precedence and completed itself right there in the middle. So this wouldn't be the best thing to do. If you had to do something like this, you might as well have a closing P tag here. Leave the H1 alone and start a new P tag over here. Notice that there's no effective change in the visual, but it's a lot cleaner on the coding side. That is just a preview of things, kind of questions that we're going to get into later. But don't worry about that for now. Let me just grab some of this. And let's get into the challenge. Use a strong tag and italic tags below. Try mixing and matching. Feel free to pause the video here. I'm going to put in a few and move on. As long as you have one bold and one italic in this tiny paragraph, you're all set and ready to go. And we can move on. Don't forget your opening and closing tags. And make sure to add one of each so you can get the practice in. I'm going to check and move on. We got bold here and italics here. And we can move on to the next lesson. All right, the line break and the horizontal rule. So the horizontal rule is not used a lot, but it creates a horizontal line across the document. And it is what's called the self-closing tag. This is the first that we've seen of these. And the HTML is really not consistent when it comes to these. So just remember that unlike P tag, where there's an opening P tag and a closing P tag with the slash, this one doesn't need a closing one. It just gets the slash kind of here at the end. Even hearing myself saying it, I know it's confusing, but just know that they operate differently than the other ones because there's only one element instead of a pair. Let's take a look at how it works. We see text here, and we can see the break right there. Otherwise, this line would be up here, but it's not. And then right away, an example of the horizontal line right there. So the BR creates breaks within the text, a line break, and the HR creates this horizontal line. And here's a couple more examples. We got, boom, one there, one here, and one here. It's time for the challenge. Add an HR and BR anywhere in the text. Try to organize it as nicely as possible. Now here is a tip. I taught this class in person, and I found that people were making the slight syntactical error since this was the first time that we were using self-closing tags, and they were just struggling to learn the fact that tags need closing tags. And then I right away gave them a challenge that specifically required not to have a closing tag. So I would do this lesson as such. You want to learn the functionality, not necessarily the syntax first. So I would say just copy this BR, just like this, and just start sprinkling it in anywhere. Boom, boom. Try 2 in a row. Try 5. Just add a bunch of them. And take a look at how your text changed. Here's the first one. I threw them all willy-nilly. Here's another one. Here's the one that has 5. And you can see that it's just going to take your text that used to be a big wall of text and start breaking it up into spots. And the HR do the same thing. Add less of these though, since it's gonna make it look pretty ugly. And we're gonna add one here. There's one. I'm gonna add one here. There's another one. So work on the, here, let's take a look up here. Work on the syntax later. Remember that every tag needs a closing tag except for these. And then when you need a line break, or you need a horizontal rule, or you need the image tag, which is very important, just look it up. And the first thing that should come to your mind is like, oh, right. These are the ones that are different than the rest. But what I really had to learn, what I really had to memorize was the previous concept, which is that every tag needs a closing one, except for these few. And there are only a few. So first of all, the line break, learn it so you can know how to break up text. But the way to actually write it, the fact that it's different than the others, keep that in the back of your mind and just refresh it whenever you need it. Just work on the functionality first, memorization second. Let's move on to the next one. Link tags. Okay, so we are going to be using attributes for the first time. So the way I would describe this is I'm going to read a little bit of what I've written over here, because it kind of captures a thought process that I want you to employ if we do it one by one. I'm going to make this one larger. So a complete link tag looks like this. There are certain parts we recognize here right away and certain parts that we don't. We recognize our A tag. We recognize that it is a tag. Notice that there's all this stuff here. We're not going to worry about that yet. But what it looks like to have is, at its most basic, an opening A and a closing A. So right now, if I told you, pop quiz, what is the link tag? And you said, it's an A, just like a P tag is a P, or a line break is BR. All it is the A. That is correct. The thing is that when you make a link, you need to give it a destination. So a link in and of itself is not a link, because even though the tag is correct, it's not going to do anything because you didn't tell it where to go. So if I were to write this text, this is a link to Google, I want to tell this tag, hey, when you click on this text, I want you to go to a particular website that I'm going to signify, which in this case is the full address to Google. So let's just take a look at one thing. Now I'm going to type in google.com. And you're going to see up there www.google.com. But if you copy it, you come back in here and you paste it, look at what happens. It comes with the HTTPS. Okay, so when you're using the link tag right away, I got a gotcha for you. Make sure that you're taking the URLs directly from the address bar so it comes complete with the HTTPS. If you just do www.google.com, it may work, but it probably won't. So, hold on. But let's go on. We know that we have our, oh, look, it printed it right here. Don't worry about that. We have our A tag, and we know that our A tag doesn't work unless we give it a link. So we got a link. And here's where we're getting to the attributes. Now, we're going to get into attributes a lot later on today in this lesson. But just know that it's in addition to the opening tag. Don't worry about that yet. I'm going to break it down a little bit. But pretty much before that closing caret, we're adding an attribute. Kind of like a person has an attribute, right? They're tall, or they work at the Gap, or they have a Ford Taurus, right? An attribute to an A tag is, hey, this is an A tag, and it has this attribute called href, which is the reference, which is the website that I'm going to go to. So the A tag goes, where am I going? Here's where I'm going. And that's where you define it. You take your A tag, which we learned. You take the href, which is an attribute, which is attribute name equal sign, and then the value, which is the website. You close it with the quotation marks, and then it works. There's another attribute called target blank, which opens the link up in a new tab. It's pretty necessary. It's got an ugly syntax, but it's important to know. That one you can memorize. So far, things that you should memorize are the HTML tag syntax, the fact that some things are self-closing and other smaller ones, where a few tags are self-closing but most are not, and that target equals underscore blank is the attribute for opening a link in a new tab. So for this challenge, all I want you to do is add a full working A tag anywhere in the text and link it to Google. Look up target blank and try to figure out how to open a new tab and add one for each one in the text. Now, I already told you what target blank does, so don't bother looking it up. But if you want more help, or it's not clicking for you, feel free to look it up. All I want you to do is add a link tag on here. So I'm just going to give you a second, and then I'm going to get into it. Okay. So we need to add a full working A tag anywhere in the text. This right here. Nunc in nisi. I'm going to wrap this and only this in an A tag. So all I do is this. And that's technically correct. But we're not going to see anything on the side. What you should be seeing is it should highlight blue or purple and have an underline to tell the user that this is a linkable text. But because there's no href, because there's no place to go, the A tag does nothing. So we're going to go, see if we can zoom in. No. Oh, here we go. We go directly inside of this A tag, give myself a little space, and I'm going to type in href for href, which is the name of the attribute. Now I want to set the attribute equal to a value, so I put an equal sign, and then 2 quotation marks, because something is going to go in there. I go back up and get from the address bar, or from wherever you have, or even from memory, if you can remember to type in the HTTPS, HTTPS :// I'm going to put that as the value of the href. And boom, worm service right here. You see, if you hover over it, it's going to go to Google. Now the target blank just gets added in addition to that opening tag. So we're still before the first caret. And I'm just going to add another attribute. In this case, it's target. I'm going to set it equal to a value. And the value will be blank to open it up in a new tab. So this is what you need right here. This is the full link tag. Study it, memorize it, realize that there is a pattern here of attribute value, that there's a pattern where they always are wrapped in quotation marks, where there always is an equal sign. Only thing that changes is the name of the attribute and the value, and that all attributes go here in the first A tag, leaving this closing one as such unchanged. And we see here, we click it, see it opens up a new tab in Google. Okay, so we're going to wrap this one up now, and I will see you in the next one.